Welcome everyone to episode 133 of the Reds Unrestricted podcast. I am your host, David Comerford, and I'm going to be giving you my reaction to Liverpool's 3-0 win over Leicester City. So that's 7 wins on the bounce for Liverpool now, courtesy of a Curtis Jones double and an absolute screamer from Trent Alexander-Arnold. It means Liverpool are guaranteed to qualify for the Europa League at least, and failing that, obviously, they'll look to make it into the Champions League with a late turnaround. We'll talk about what this means for the top 4 race, as much as it is a race in the last few games of the season, later in the podcast. But first, let's kind of talk through this game, look at how Liverpool performed as a whole, who stood out individually, and then, like I say, we'll get into what it means in terms of the table. So, 3-red match review first of all, as per usual. I've decided to go with barely broke sweat because if you look at Liverpool's victories this season, and certainly those kind of massive blowout wins, Bournemouth at home, Man United at home, Leeds away, those are kind of on their own plane in terms of how sort of easy they were, I suppose. But this is sort of right behind them, I think. And I didn't think I'd be saying that based on how the game started. I thought Liverpool started poorly, looked like a team who'd had a 9-day break between matches, who'd been to Barcelona for a short break in between. They looked like the rhythm, the momentum that they built up had been somewhat disrupted. And Leicester got the crowd behind them, looked like they had that sense of urgency that you would have expected from them. Liverpool, I thought, as well, when they were going forward, really lacked kind of that cohesion, lacked that sort of identity for a bit, and you weren't seeing those sort of rehearsed attacking patterns that you see from a team who is kind of sort of elite and in form. So it left me with a little bit of a bad feeling early on, as in, was this going to be a game that stalls our win and run? But no, we get a goal to break the game open. And it's a near carbon copy of a goal that Curtis Jones scored against Tottenham a couple of weeks ago. Ball to the back post with Jones making the run, very similar finish too. Perfect pass from Mohamed Salah. And I think it's something that we'll see more often with the system is sort of that left centre midfield player, maybe the right sided player too, making that kind of back post run, really. And obviously afforded that extra freedom by having Trent behind them. We saw Liverpool get another goal moments after that, and it was a goal of the highest quality in terms of the pass from Salah again, and the outrageous finish from Curtis Jones, just about onside, much like the first one, with Diaz obviously earlier in the build-up for the first. And I think another thing to mention with this goal is how nice the turn was from Cody Gakpo in the build-up, sort of a subtle detail, but again, playing that kind of connector role to perfection from him. And Johnny Evans said in an interview after the game that the game was almost decided in that very short period. There's Liverpool fans olaying before half-time, which kind of encapsulates that. And it felt as if Liverpool were in complete control for the second half, really. Leicester hardly threatened, and it felt like just a question of whether Liverpool could get a third. It was interesting to hear Dean Smith, the Leicester manager, mention in his post-match interview that Liverpool were just on another level physically, and a lot of times this season Liverpool have looked second best to the opposition in that sense, so it was refreshing in that way to re-establish our superiority, I suppose. And yeah, then that third goal, which in the end comes from a set piece, a routine Liverpool used to score against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the season they won the league, one that they very nearly scored with against Crystal Palace in a draw that could actually prove to be costly, I suppose, a goalless draw. But obviously Jordan Henderson ended up getting in the way of that one, as Klopp kind of alluded to in his post-match interview. This time, though, Trent with an absolutely phenomenal strike, and I believe that is now 9 out of 12 Premier League goals from outside the box, and that is certainly one of his very best. And it was interesting to hear, obviously, waxing lyrical about Trent after the game. Jamie Carragher was, but Gary Neville kind of made that point again about his defending, and it made me just sort of think, he is kind of doomed by being English in a way, because every single thing he does will be seen by the kind of by the media as, or seen through the prism of Reece James, of Kyle Walker, of Kieran Trippier. Whereas kind of international players don't have that pressure because we're not really bothered about, how they figure in their national team setups. Trent has that, and everything, the whole dialogue's dominated by that, to the point where we don't necessarily take a moment to appreciate that that is a right back producing a finish like that, and that is not just a freak goal. That is in his locker. He's scored goals like that before. It reminds me also of one he scored against Aston Villa behind closed doors. He is, an absolute phenomenon. And let's not lose sight of that as we have these kind of inane debates, I suppose, over who ranks where and stuff. Let's just kind of think about sort of how special Trent is, and not let his career be defined by other players at other clubs. We're going to get on it too in a second, then a few of the sort of stars of the show. But before that, please do remember to give us a 5-star review if you enjoy Red Zone Restricted. It only takes a second, but it makes a big difference to us. And also remember that you can email us at redzonerestrictedpodcast@gmail.com with any thoughts or questions that you want us to answer on the podcast or address off it. So yeah, the only player that we can start with is Curtis Jones. I had a look at halftime, and the last time a midfielder scored twice for Liverpool in a single game was Fabinho against Shrewsbury, however you want to say it, last season in the FA Cup. So you're going back pretty much 18 months for that one. Before that, it was Jones himself against Lincoln City in another cup game. So it's not necessarily happening in the biggest matches either. So just another continuation, I suppose, of Jones's exceptional form lately. Carragher called it the form of his life, and you can't dispute that. But I just wonder what it looks like for him next season, because in a way, he's putting this run together and he's playing well, but I still think Liverpool are going to go out and sign a player who starts in that left-sided number 8 role. And if Jones is in the role next season of second choice to someone like Alexis McAllister, for example, then I think that is big progress for him, and that's going to mean a lot of playing time. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just, I suppose, a little unfortunate for him that despite this kind of, despite riding this high, be brought down a little bit by seeing who Liverpool bring in the summer transfer window. But that is the competition, I suppose, and Klopp with the renewed depth, I suppose, which with Jones' resurgence in recent weeks. And in the more short-term future for Jones, we saw Gareth Southgate watching at the King Power tonight, potentially an England call-up for that sort of June squad. But we'll see about that. The other player we have to talk about is Mohamed Salah. 3 assists tonight. One of them granted a sort of a very short pass to Trent Alexander-Arnold, almost like that assist to from, I think, Busquets to Messi when he scored that Maisie goal in the Champions League final. This one just sort of a layoff for Trent to whip a free kick right into the top corner, but the first 2 goals are just absolutely outrageous passes, and we could see Salah end this season in the top 3 for not only goals, because I think he's one behind Ivan Toney from that point of view, but also assists as well. And only Bukayo Saka and Kevin De Bruyne, who have 11 and 16 respectively, have actually assisted more goals in the Premier League than Salah this season. So this is a player who was a Golden Boot winner and a Playmaker Award winner last season, and he's still right up there in both of those charts this year. It truly is sort of just greatness personified. And one of the things I thought about with Salah was, and one of the big challenges we have in sort of doing this podcast every week is the most consistent player of the Klopp era, the most consistently elite player of the Klopp era. How do you find new ways to praise him without just kind of repeating yourself? But then on the flip side, if you just kind of take it for granted, then you're letting it pass you by a little bit. And the thing I'd say now in terms of a new angle on Salah Sort of you having to find limitless ones, but pretty much every player you would describe as a star or a superstar of the Jurgen Klopp era at Liverpool has had a drop off at some point. So, Virgil van Dijk this season, Fabinho this season, Trent for a large part of this season, maybe a couple of years ago as well. Even Sadio Mane in the year behind closed doors. Remember, he called that the worst season of his career. All of them have had an off year. Salah hasn't. There have been times where it's looked like we're seeing an off year develop, and then he just kind of goes on a mad run, and that's exactly what he's on at the moment. Having said that, should have scored in this game. Gakpo plays him through, and we're all just kind of expecting the net to bulge. Literally every single person watching that attack develop is expecting it, and then he just puts it wide and gets it all wrong, really. So he was frustrated about that, and I think when he came off as well, he looked a bit frustrated to be subbed off without getting his goal. But certainly still a momentous night for him. The first time in his Premier League career that he's assisted 3 goals in a game. So Gakpo, obviously the one who created that chance. Like I say, I think he deserves mention too. This was a sort of a game where we saw pretty much the whole second half. With the Liverpool away end chanting, "Si Senor Roberto Firmino's song." Firmino is now into the final couple of weeks of Liverpool career. His game, provided he's fit, his last Anfield game looks like Aston Villa on Saturday. Really hope he can feature in that one, obviously, and then maybe Southampton on the final day too. So yeah, you can understand why the fans are doing that, and it's a challenge for Gakpo. It's a challenge for Nunez. Those kind of players in that number 9 position who've come in recently, can they kind of develop the same bond with the supporters that Firmino has? Because we think so much about who's the player who is most universally adored, who's the player fans love most in the Klopp era, and everyone struggles with that. But I think the common denominator across most people's answers would be Firmino, and you saw that tonight. You saw that even with the squad as well. So they need to kind of develop that connection. But from a sort of footballing standpoint, as much as it is going to sort of really hit us in the chest next week, I think, we've all got this vision of what it might look like for Firmino in his last Anfield game. To have Gakpo there makes it a lot easier to lose him in a way, because he is developing into the perfect air. I think he's getting better by the week. I mentioned earlier that kind of classic false 9 contribution in terms of knitting the moves together for that second Liverpool goal it was. And I just find him a joy to watch, to be honest. I think we were all a little bit kind of I think there was patience with his slow start, but it was also a little bit, we were a little bit underwhelmed, I suppose, just from the standards that we sort of seen from previous signings. But obviously Liverpool were struggling so much, and as he's got more settled, as he's adjusted to this role, as Liverpool have improved in recent weeks, he's really gone up a level, and you're so excited for what he can do next season as well. And one point that I'd like to make on him is he was fouled 4 times tonight, and since he came to Liverpool, I'm not sure if it is actually applied tonight at all, but he's got, I think, 8 players booked, which is twice as many as any other player in the Liverpool squad. And this is a product of him being able to get the ball turned, go on a drive and run. And he has kind of the close control, the speed, that the only way teams are deciding they can stop them is to bring him down. And that can be frustrating, obviously, from a Liverpool standpoint. But, you're landing them in disciplinary trouble. You're creating the set piece situations. I mean, we saw today for that third goal how, costly they can be when you got Trent Alexander-Arnold on the pitch. So I think it is sort of a valuable weapon for Liverpool. And it also shows sort of that Gakpo is just too hot to handle. And the last player I want to touch on before we talk about the top 4 race, as promised, is Alisson, actually, which seems a bit of a strange one because, I mentioned earlier, Liverpool in control, Leicester not really creating too much at all over the course of the game. But it was someone else from Alisson I saw tonight that I wanted to talk about, and it was kind of his sweeping ability. Because a lot of the time you see in sort of situations develop which could be dangerous chances for Leicester, balls in behind that Liverpool high line, but you can't take for granted the value of a goalkeeper who's proactive, coming out his box and sweeping them up. In previous eras with other goalkeepers, David De Gea is the perfect example. A lot of the time is sort of rooted to his box. Those are big chances. Those are goals potentially. But with Alisson, they just become non-events. But that is just because he is so sort of aggressive and so confident in those situations. Like tonight, 4 times he ran out of his goal and 4 times he was successful, according to SofaScore. So just sort of a sweeping masterclass from him, really, and an illustration of the importance of that role, even when he doesn't have too many saves to make within this Liverpool system. But yeah, so the top 4 race, Liverpool, 36 games played, 1 point behind Man United and Newcastle, who've obviously played a game less. So essentially, Liverpool will need Man United to draw twice, or Newcastle to, as it stands, lose 1 and draw 1. If Newcastle were to draw 2 of their last 3, then it is going to come down to goal difference, which Liverpool incidentally boosted tonight with obviously a 3-goal win after a couple of, I think there was a long sequence of 1-goal wins before this. So it's good to sort of boost that up a little bit, if that is going to be part of the equation. And I think when you look at the fixtures, and I feel like we're doing this every episode, but this is just the way the race evolves. Man United have Bournemouth away, they've got Chelsea at home, and then they've got Fulham at home. None of those fixtures really inspire too much optimism. I think from Liverpool's standpoint, United are going to have to throw in kind of, they are the liable to produce a stinker. We saw that against West Ham. But I think it's better to look at Newcastle. And one of their games is also against Leicester. They're playing them at home. Based on tonight, you think they can't really do much. Newcastle should be comfortable in that game. Obviously, again, they will be fighting for their lives. They do have quality players, but those arguments haven't really got them anywhere recently. The hope is Brighton, who go to St. James's Park on Thursday. We've just seen, I suppose we've seen in the space of about a week how good Brighton can be and how bad they can be. Absolutely appalling against Everton. And they always won, having kept Everton in the league. They now need to sort of, I suppose, do Liverpool a favour, having already taken 5 points off them, or 4 points off them, I should say, in the league this season. I think we are owed one by Brighton against Newcastle. I mean, absolutely mesmerising performance from them against Arsenal. You're not going to see many better performances from kind of a team outside the Big Six than that. I can't really recall too many in the sort of modern era at all, to be honest. If they can produce sort of close to those levels, I think they can definitely do something. This is a team as well who could still finish. Liverpool are guaranteed to be top 6. They could still finish above Liverpool too. So maybe we shouldn't get too carried away asking them for a favour. But Liverpool do their job. Obviously, they'll be fine on that front. And then Newcastle's other game takes them to Stamford Bridge to face Chelsea. And Frank Lampard's appointment feels like it might actually cost Liverpool, because it's almost like with any other manager in there, you feel like they could maybe do something, but they have been so abject under Lampard that it's hard to be too confident. But I thought Carragher summed it up quite well in Monday Night Football when he said they do have players who can produce magic, so it could just be, one of those games where it is decided by one of the fantastic players that Chelsea do have. And if you're Newcastle, you've never been in this position before. Going to Chelsea away on the final day, that is still a daunting proposition, regardless of how poor Chelsea have been this season. I think, can they potentially do something there? It's so strange because if you said at the start of the season that Liverpool would need sort of Chelsea away, Chelsea at home to do them a favour on the final day, you'd think, oh God, that's a great position to be in. And now you're like, oh, there's no reason to have any confidence in them at all, except for sort of the players that they do have. So you basically would be relying on that. And also, we've seen Arsenal basically kind of fold under pressure in terms of their inexperience. Will we see the same from Newcastle, who have, to their credit, been outstanding up to this point in the season, but Liverpool doing absolutely all they can at the moment to really crank up the pressure on them before they face one of the toughest tests in the league. So all hope is not lost, certainly, with only 2 games to go for Liverpool, 3 to go for those other teams, and we'll hold out for a late turnaround, which remains unlikely, but still possible very much. So yeah, just before we go, if you've been watching on YouTube, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and whether you're listening on audio or watching on video, press the notification button and you'll get a message every time we post a new episode. And the next time you'll hear us is after the game against Aston Villa at the weekend. And whatever happens in the top 4 race between now and the end of the season, you'll hear it covered here on Reds Unrestricted. But thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next time.